Yeah.
Starbucks is $6 a Starbucks. People get caught up in the price of the house when really most people who are buying with a mortgage, they're looking at their monthly payment. We usually earn on a monthly basis and spend on a monthly basis. So really getting buyers to look at that point of view helps get them out of their own way. Smokers. I don't know what it is in Pennsylvania, but it's like $12 a pack in Jersey.
Highway robbery.
I don't even know at this point. It's
So just as an example, and even coffee, let's do Starbucks.
Yeah.
Starbucks is $6 a Starbucks.
Mm-hmm.
If you drink one every day, it's $180.
Mm-hmm.
$30,000 worth of mortgage money.
Mm-hmm.
What's more important to you?
Young Junk! How's it going, everybody? This is Jason Ostrowski, and welcome to another episode of the Everything Real Estate Podcast. Today, we welcome my special guest, Adi Kaveria from BHHS Fox & Roach Realtors in the Metuchen office, into the studio to talk about the beginning stages of the buyer process, specifically having a killer buyer consultation process that you can lean on systematically when gaining new clients. So much of what we focus on as agents is our listing presentation and the selling side of the transaction. But with more buyers looking to purchase homes in 2026, having a smart, well thought out buyer consultation process provides something every buyer needs in order to make an informed decision about purchasing a home, and that is clarity. It's pretty simple. The more clarity you can provide to your buyers, the closer they are to buying, and that's what Adi and I are here to discuss in today's episode. I can't wait to get into the episode with you this week, so let's dive deep into the buying process with Adi Kaveria. So I am here today with my special guest, Adi Kaveria from our BHHS Fox & Roach Metuchen office in New Jersey. And we don't get to often talk to people from Upper Jersey. So we were talking earlier about being sports fans, and you may be a tortured Jets fan, which I totally feel for you. It's just a state of consistent depression up there. So anyway, with that said, I'm glad that you could take the trip down and join us today. We are going to be talking about something that we don't often talk about as agents. We're so focused on the listing process and our listing presentation, but very rarely do we get into talking about the buyer consultation or the buyer process. So you and I were talking, I don't know, a couple weeks ago about possibly getting together, doing a podcast on that, which is exactly what we're going to do today. So Adi, thanks for making the trip down. How you doing, man? We're in studio.
That was good. The studio is amazing. So this is so cool.
You are my first guest in studio, so I'm very excited to have you here. It's going to be an awesome experience. So I want to start by asking you, because you obviously are in New Jersey,
Yep.
which is different than Pennsylvania in terms of how our buyer agency works. So why don't we start there and make that distinction right off the bat, New Jersey versus Pennsylvania, and let's talk about that a little bit.
So for a long time, New Jersey did not have a formal buyer's agency. It existed, but it had no teeth. There was no difference in what you did. You couldn't really get a contract with a buyer in order to protect yourself because they could just go to somebody else. So it didn't really make sense. Way back in 2012, I did ABR for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And even having the ABR, it didn't really have any teeth where I could get them to sign contracts, get a buyer to sign a contract with us, because they could just walk out and walk to the next person and you couldn't do anything about it. So that was the big difference. And with all the new buyer's agency stuff that rolled out across the country, it gave agents a huge opportunity to really create that new marketplace for themselves.
And you were talking about a niche kind of market for that in New Jersey. In PA, obviously, we've had buyer agency, I think, since the late 90s. So we're kind of ahead where you were at that time. But I want to talk about specifically that new niche that you're going to be doing and the opportunities that arise from that. So I want to start with the question, why do you believe that a formal buyer interview is critical in today's market?
So a lot of what we do, and the reason that I really think it can become a niche for agents, is that it is half of every transaction. If I ask you who's involved in a transaction, there is a buyer and a seller every time. And yet, as agents, we're taught to only focus on getting listings and the seller, and we ignore 50% of a transaction, which could create really brand new niches for agents to focus in. Especially as a new agent, it gives you opportunities where you're not competing against somebody who's been in the market for 30 years, has an established brand, and all of that. The other part of this is what happens with most buyers eventually, Jason?
They turn into sellers.
So if you have that relationship and they already trust you on the one side, you already set yourself up for future transactions.
I think that's a great point, because the way that I built my business in the beginning, I sat every open house that I could possibly sit. I also took as many renters as I possibly could, because they eventually turn into buyers that eventually turn into sellers. So like you had said, if you're a new agent in this business, usually you're going to skew towards buyers and those opportunities, because like you said, the more established agents usually are the ones with the listings.
Yeah, and that's what happens. They have an established name, so they're much easier for sellers to find out there. As far as having that consult, would you ever take a listing without doing a listing consultation and a listing presentation?
Absolutely not.
It's the same thing. So if we don't treat it like an equal part and they don't feel like an equal part of it, then we're not treating them the way they should be treated. I did not really realize how much there is for that until going through like Ninja, where Ninja really codifies both the buyer and the seller process with having the interview for a buyer and going from there.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about the Ninja process. We're going to get into that. I can tell you it's kind of wild to me. When I first started my career and floor time was in vogue, right? We're sitting at the front desk, we're answering the phones. I would get a call and I would immediately leave to go show a property, like most agents would.
That's what we were taught.
But now we think about not only the buyer consultation process, but we think about security and all those reasons, safety, all those reasons why you should start with a buyer consultation process before you ever see a property. So let's go over that process and start there. When a new buyer reaches out to you, what action steps do you take before you ever venture out to see the property? What's your process? Let's go from start to finish.
Setting up the appointment. You need to have them come in. One of the things we're always concerned about as agents is, are our clients legitimate? Are they really buyers? Are they just kicking tires? If they won't even come in and talk to you for 45 minutes, they're probably not.
Yeah.
You also have to establish that you're worth what you're going to get paid. And that's a big part of having that buyer's consult, where you can set those expectations, set up the process, and really get a buyer to understand that there's value to hiring you.
100%.
And if you don't talk to them, you can't do that. And if they're not willing to come in, then they're not willing to come in, and you should move on.
And, people think about it, or agents always think about it. Well, I could have had this buyer, but they weren't willing to come in. Well, you never had that buyer to begin with because they weren't serious. And that's the bottom line. That's the first line of demarcation. We'll get into the approval process and pre-qualification process. We'll talk about that as well. But what do you think is the biggest mistake that agents make when they skip or rush through the buyer consultation?
I think they're hurting themselves and their clients. Without having that consultation in the middle, you don't know what they want. They don't know what they want. They don't know what the process looks like. They don't know what the requirements are, the time frames. They haven't had a reality check. Many times people come in for a consult and they haven't even talked to each other. Or they don't know who all the decision makers are in between. All those things will harm them as the process goes, right? So they go out, they see a house, they like it, and they go, oh, Uncle Joe and my mom need to come. Yeah, he lives in California. Maybe he'll be out next week to see it. And in our current marketplaces, especially New Jersey, you don't have that kind of time.
You're going to miss it. I mean, that's the bottom line. Just like on the listing side, you want all decision makers to be there. Same goes for the buying process. And I kind of, wonder why people go about skipping that consult, because I think the most important thing, and Ninja teaches this as well, is clarity is key. And everything that you do on the buying side, you should be providing clarity before you ever step into the property, because it makes the process go quicker. They're going to buy sooner, and everybody's going to be happy because there's no surprises when you go through and you're setting those expectations up front.
And that's the biggest problem, right? So if you don't have that set up and you haven't done that, then the process takes longer.
Mhm.
By the time they come to our door, they've probably been looking at Realtor.com or Zillow for 3 to 6 months. So
Mhm.
they think they know everything. And yes, they might know about houses or prices. They don't actually know what the process looks like. It's the same reason that for sale by owners fail so often. They know what their house is worth. They don't actually know what they have to do to get from point A to closed.
Mhm. Well, it's having enough information to be dangerous, right?
Yeah.
But you don't know. It's just like when you go to the doctor. Like if you're going to the general practitioner and there's something wrong with you, they're going to send you to the specialist,
Yep.
right? We are the specialists. We know what we're doing, and this is how we're going to approach the buying process. So with all that said, how do you handle buyers that want to rush out to see homes before you ever sit down for a
I
consultation?
don't.
It's a great answer.
It's
Yeah.
really straightforward. If they don't have time to do the consult, they can go to open houses. They don't need me. They're not at that stage where my professionalism and my expertise is actually going to help them with buying a house. So what's the point of doing it? We're obligated and to show our Berkshire Hathaway listings because we represent the sellers. In reality, most of those people who show up to just look at a house are not there yet.
Mhm.
They're probably 3, 6, 9 months out from doing it. So it's worth having that conversation, getting on their radar, starting to educate them. But I don't go out to show houses unless they've actually sat down with us.
Hey, listen, I'm all about keeping my weekends free if I can do that, right? So I don't want somebody wasting my time for a couple hours on a Saturday or a Sunday going to these open houses, like you said, without them going through the process and being committed to me. And I think that's the other thing that we need to talk about is commitment is a two-way street.
Yes.
If we're going to commit to the buyers, we want them to commit to us. And so in the ninja selling process, there's a strong emphasis on flow and structure to the buying process and the buyer consultation.
Yep.
How do you create a predictable professional flow for the buyers from day one?
I try to follow that ninja process. Ever since I learned about it, I really just take that process and I use that every time so that it's a consistent experience from each referral and each new person you meet. And once it turns into a habit, it becomes so much easier to do. You don't have to think about it unless something has changed in the rules from the state or from the REC. But you can just kind of flow through the process in between and get buyers to understand that you're not going to let them miss out on things. You're going to protect them. You're going to make sure that what they spend on a home is what they're comfortable spending.
Mm-hmm.
With buyer's agency, one of the biggest questions was, I have to pay extra. And that's not really the case. And again, what buyers don't understand is that they were always paying. I actually use Monopoly to illustrate that. So I have props when I do my buyer's consult.
I think you told me this before. I think we talked about it in Robbinsville, if I'm not mistaken.
It works out great.
Yeah.
So if I go to a buyer who paid commissions, they usually answer sellers. And I go, that's interesting. Can the seller walk into a ShopRite and buy groceries with their house?
Mhm.
No, they really can't. Okay, so who's got the money? The buyer and the bank.
Mhm.
Until you give that money to the seller, they don't actually have any money, right? That's why foreclosures happen. That's why
Sure.
short sales happen. You have a property, but you don't actually have money to pay for it.
Mhm.
So actually illustrating that to somebody and going, here's a house. Who has all this monopoly money? It's not this person. They don't get this until you hand them the money. So that became a really good way to illustrate for a buyer that their money was always used to pay everybody.
Mhm.
They were just never told about it. So now they get to understand that it's their money that's being distributed. And now what they have is the opportunity to control how much they're paying their agent. What are we worth?
Yeah,
In between.
absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a great way to do it. Obviously, people are visual learners most of the time. They can relate to that.
Yep.
And we talk about making the informational, like, digestible for a buyer during a consult. So one thing I like to do in particular is I have my buying process from start to finish. Okay, what is it going to take to actually make the offer? What forms are we going to need to make the offer? Okay, we're now under contract. What's our time periods? We have the inspection period first up in PA. We have 10 days to make that happen. What does that look like? You're going to pay for the home inspection at the time that it's done. It's not going to be wrapped into your closing costs. And oh, by the way, if you walk away, then you're still spending that money, right? So I'm going through every phase of the transaction with them. So that's the second part of the conversation that I do. The first part is obviously talking about their wants and their needs, their price point, the locations, everything, lifestyle, everything that they want in a home. So we know when we're ready to go. We're narrowing down already the houses that are out there, and Ninja has the rolling three or the funnel process. I love that kind of stuff. It's helped me immensely throughout my real estate career. So I'm sure you're the same way.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of realtors make the mistake of asking what instead of why.
Yes.
Right. So that has been a big game changer in the questions that I ask. Why do you need this?
Mm-hmm.
What's the reason for this? What are your expectations? What are you going to use this room for? How important is this dining room to you? Oh, we never sit and do formal dining. Well, then do you really need it?
Yeah.
You know, Ninja also has basically a wants and needs kind of the T list.
Yep.
What I have clients do is every decision maker gets a pad, writes their own, and they're not allowed to talk to each other.
Yes, I have the same exact thing.
Never talked about it.
Same exact thing. I used to hand them a piece of paper, and then we'd go through that. We'd match up at the end. So, all right. So let me stop you there, because we talk about probing questions that we can ask, the why to everything. Yeah. So a perfect example is someone may tell you that they need 4 bedrooms. But what they're really trying to tell you once you do this exercise is that they need 3 bedrooms plus an office space. So there is potential to do a 3-bedroom home if it has a separate office space to it.
Yep.
And that's the probing question. So what other types of probing questions do you like to ask to uncover their motivation, let's say? Is there a go-to question for you?
The tell me more seems to work better than anything else.
I like the wave a magic wand.
Yeah. From Ninja is the magic wand.
Yeah.
And I've kind of seen buyers cringe at the magic wand. So I've gone to tell me more about this. So tell me more about your reasons for this. What are you trying to accomplish? Why are you doing it? Oh, I'm going to have parents moving in with me. That's why I need that downstairs bed. What are the options with it? Is it something that's immediate that your parents are moving in? Or if the house has potential for you to create this downstairs bedroom in 5 years, would that be acceptable for you? Are you willing to put work into the house? So that gives you other options. Are you not?
And I think when it comes to the buyer process, get curious with these people, right? What is important to them? Keep asking those questions, because the further that you drill down, again, the more clarity they're going to have, which in turn makes them buy sooner.
Yeah. And really, it's basically pretending like a 5-year-old. Why?
Yeah, why?
Why?
Yeah, perfect question. Absolutely. All right, so how do you define wants versus needs during the consultation? How do you define that?
That pad is the best.
Yeah.
Best tool that we have for doing that. Again, many times they've just not had that conversation between each other, let alone out loud to somebody else. Well, I really want the big, who's taking care of it?
Yeah. And that's right. All right. So I don't want to make this overly ninja, but I do want to mention the 10-step buyer process, right? So let's talk about that a little bit, because let's pretend that I'm a new buyer coming in to see you and you're the agent. What's the first thing that you're going to do with me?
Agency. Hopefully Kurt's listening. So agency is the first thing that we do every time before we get into anything else. And explain it to them. This is what it means. I'm going to be your fiduciary. And then we can get into the nitty gritty about everything else. I actually walk people through how mortgage payments are created, which is not something many agents even know how to do.
I've seen you do that. Yeah, it's really impressive. It really is.
And it's a game changer for them, because then they understand if I go to a town with lesser taxes, I can spend more money on a house. It's not just the price of the house. people get caught up in the price of the house when really most people who are buying with a mortgage, they're looking at their monthly payment. We usually earn on a monthly basis and spend on a monthly basis. So really getting buyers to look at that point of view helps get them out of their own way. Smokers. I don't know what it is in Pennsylvania, but it's like $12 a pack in Jersey.
I don't even know at this point. It's yeah.
So just as an example, and even coffee, let's do Starbucks.
Yeah.
Starbucks is $6 a Starbucks. If you drink one every day, it's $180. $30,000 worth of mortgage money. What's more important to you?
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, those are like Rain Man type numbers that you're putting together. It's pretty impressive. I've seen you do this, and I'm like, that's a great idea. I just know for me, I guess I'm just not that good at math. So I don't know if I would.
It's a lot of practice.
If I would be that good at doing that.
It's a lot of practice.
Yeah.
I mean, we know what the numbers are, right?
Yeah.
So you don't have to be able to do it in your head. I tell my agents this all the time, right? So you just have to be able to understand where it comes from and then use a calculator.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's really, you don't have to know the math. You have to know the concept.
And I think you bring up a great point, because one thing that you're going to find out is obviously the price point. But ultimately, it's not about the price point. It's how much you want to spend per month, because your taxes are going into that. You're explaining this to the buyer and why that there might be HOA fees. So what is your bottom line number, which you want to do, and how much are you going to be putting down on the property? Those are the type of questions, the probing questions we talked about, right?
I've had clients come in thinking they could afford 500 and they could afford $1 million. I've had clients come in thinking they can afford 750 and they could afford 250. So
that's a tough one to swallow. That's
but it happens,
Yeah.
They're like,
yeah.
I own a liquor store. I make $300,000 a year. Yeah, but you don't show that on paper. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a lot of things that go into it that they don't realize. So we rely on our mortgage partners, especially Prosperity, to get that stuff across.
Absolutely.
And then really help them evaluate what is the best solution for them in between.
So we talked about this a little bit earlier, and I think I know what you're going to say, right? But how do you identify? Because I think early in the career of an agent, they have a harder time kind of distinguishing who's serious and who's not. Once you've been in the business for a while, it's like automatic. You can tell it's like real estate street smarts, right? We know who's serious and who isn't. So how do you identify and separate the unserious buyers from the highly motivated buyers who's ready to purchase?
The consult helps a lot, right? The hardest part for me when I was newer was learning to let go. I've spent 3 months with these people. It's very dramatic, except it doesn't matter. You could spend 3 years with them and they might still not do anything. So really setting that buyer's consult and having that buyer's consult keeps you on the right track for it. And sometimes I'm wrong, and that's okay. They're A buyers and I treat them like Bs. It happens. But you learn from it and then you move forward.
I can't tell you how many times Anne in my life has said, my wife Anne, who is in real estate as well, has said, fire this person over my shoulder, as I'm working with a buyer for like 3 years, right? So it happens, but ultimately you have to decide, is this worth your time?
It's really funny. I'm at the point that if my wife knows their name, I probably worked with them for too long.
That's very true. That's a good marker to have.
Yeah.
I can tell you, I guess I must be a knucklehead. I'm a little hard-headed. I get very into the buying process with my people. They become like family, as I'm sure like they do for you. And yeah, sometimes we spend a long time looking together. But again, ultimately, these are the factors that can help mitigate that time that you're going to spend out in the field with them. As much as we love them, we want them to buy, get under contract, and then we move on to the next one.
Listen, I'd rather hang out with them than work with them in many cases.
Yeah.
It's actually really funny. There's been clients I fired over the years once I got comfortable doing that. And many of them feel that they know more or that other realtors deliver the same thing. Sometimes letting them go is the best thing you can do. They'll go out, meet some other realtors and go, oh, maybe that wasn't a great idea.
Well, we're often looked at as a commodity.
Yes.
right? And that we're all equal. And so we're helping to give you a value proposition especially on the buying side. I've been in competition to represent buyers before. They've interviewed multiple agents. I am happy to say I don't think I've ever lost on a buyer interview process because of my process.
Yep.
Right. And so how do you set the expectation? Now, this is an important one because in this market, we're dealing with multiple offer situation. We're dealing with inventory situations. There are a lot of dynamics in the market right now that can play against a buyer. So how do you set the expectation with them when you sit down about inventory, competition, what it's going to take to actually win out on an offer? How do you approach that with them?
We also have an additional one, and just I want to add to this: the media.
Mm-hmm.
The media talks about news on a national level, and really, real estate is so local
Mm-hmm.
that it makes it even more of a challenge. I usually just ask them questions. Most of their friends, family, somebody they know has bought and complained about what the market is like.
Mm-hmm.
So if you start asking those questions, then you can walk right into their expectations about it. And I tell them on average it takes 8 offers for an offer to be accepted. The first 3 you're going to listen to Uncle Joe instead of me,
Mm-hmm.
who bought 20 years ago in a really crappy market. And then the next 4 you're going to start listening, and you're still not going to want to believe what's happening.
Yeah.
So
It's so true.
it's okay.
Yeah.
And same thing with the timelines. It's like, look, you may find it tomorrow. And one of the first things that I try to do on the buyer's consult is give them permission to buy the first house they see. Because the advice they're getting is you should see like 15, 20, 30 houses. And the biggest regrets my buyers have ever had is that they didn't buy the first house they saw. So I give them permission to do that. And that seems to allow them to just move forward. Like, you don't really need my permission.
Mm-hmm.
I will tell you that the biggest regret that I see from buyers is not what they've bought, it's what they've not bought in between.
And I like to use 2 things. Can you see yourself living here?
Yep.
Number 1, right? Great question to ask your buyers when you're out there. And the 85% rule.
Yep.
Because the 85% rule, for those that are listening and don't know what the 85% rule is, if a house has at least 85% of what you want in it, it might be time to write that offer, because very rarely do you ever get 100% of what you're looking for. So that helps to clarify, again, clarification in a buyer's mind when you're out there and they're stepping into their first house and it has everything they want, but they think that they need to go out and look at more houses. Use the 85% rule, right?
And the most common thing they go is, what if I find something better? What if you don't?
Yeah, exactly. Especially in this market, right?
What if you don't? You may never have the opportunity again. It's not like every property is the same, which is why the condos and townhouses are such a different dynamic than single family homes. You can get the same condo townhouse multiple times. With a single family house, usually it's one chance, and then
especially if it has that character. I know when I bought my house, like it's funny. When I bought my house, we walked in the side door. I looked to my left, I looked to my right, and I'm like, we're buying this house. I didn't even need to go upstairs. I knew that we were going to be buying this house, and I just knew it. But a lot of buyers get kind of in their own way,
yes.
Right? It's paralysis by analysis.
Yep.
So again, we're here to clarify, and we're here to help them along in that process.
And as agents, one of the first things that I think we should learn is to watch our buyers as they walk into a house. You can usually tell what's going on with a buyer as soon as they walk through the door. Do they feel comfortable, uncomfortable? And when you start recognizing that in a client and go, look, I see you're uncomfortable here. Let's move on. This obviously is not for you. It's not what you're looking for.
I got to tell you, the one thing, we all come across buyers who think they're being polite by going through the house for, an hour and a half. I love the buyers that are just like,
Nope.
Walk in the door, hate it, let's go,
Yeah.
Right? We all love those types of buyers.
Look, we can't help you if you don't talk to us, right?
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to for a realtor. If you don't give me any feedback, I can't help you, because you're going to look at maybe 5 to 10 houses a weekend. I'm going to see 50. And many times I'll find a house for buyer A with buyer B. And buyer B is like, this is not for me.
Mm-hmm.
I can call buyer A and go, hey, this is your house.
Yeah.
You need to show up. I will wait here for you. You need to show up and see this house. Obviously, I already have an appointment. You need to drop what you're doing and come here.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a good point because you keep your warm list handy too,
Yeah.
because you never know what you're going to come across. Okay, so we talked a little bit about the mortgage process, but I want to get into that a little bit further with you. So what financial conversations should happen early in the process, and how do you approach pre-approval or pre-qualification discussions professionally with your buyers?
So I really try to make it about them. Okay. And again, stories, things that they need to understand, things that they've already experienced. So imagine walking into your grocery store, you left your wallet at home. Can you buy your groceries? No. I mean, and everybody's at least experienced something along those lines where they can connect to it. Excuse me. So I try to give them those stories, let them connect to that, and then go, this is the same thing. If we walk into a house that you want to purchase, I don't want you to feel rushed in getting your pre-approval, getting your finances in order. I had a client whose identity had been stolen. We didn't find out till we did the pre-approval. And then you are in trouble because we can't do anything for you. It's going to take you 6 months, a year to get your identity theft cleared up. These are all things where we need to know about this ahead of time because we don't want to put you in a situation where your deposit's at risk or the house that you really loved is gone or any of these other situations. And by making it such a matter-of-fact part of the process, it becomes very, very easy to have that conversation.
I think you have to have confidence talking about it, right? If you're trying to line them up with your lender, I think we all know we have buyers that want to go out there, experience, different banks, talking to different people, which is perfectly fine. It's their right to do so. But we know, and I'm not trying to cast aspersions, but some of the bigger banks and some of the hassles that can come about with that, our expertise has to go into that explanation. I always like to tell my people when I'm trying to line them up with a lender, and you had told a story. I like to tell a story about just having them going through that process. And Ann had mentioned this in a sales meeting. I tell them about how intrusive it can be. And I like to say it's like having a full body cavity search, which, it kind of lightens the mood a little bit, softens them a little bit. So they know, again, in advance what they're dealing with when they're getting pre-qualified for their mortgage, right? We're talking about that process. We're talking about the lender and how it ties in. And I also say you don't want to be out there falling in love with a property that you can't afford. Right. So the last thing that we want to do is go out there, show a property that unfortunately you fall in love with and you can't afford. So let's start there and get you pre-qualified.
That way we're not showing you things you can't do anything about in between.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
It takes a big burden off of them too. And again, we talked about it. I always tell them not to look at price. We have towns in New Jersey where the tax rate is 2.2 and then towns where it's 3.7, 3.8. It's a drastic difference in what you can afford when your taxes go from $12,000 to $8,000. That's $350 a month. And I know you're going to get upset about my numbers, but that works out to about $50,000 in mortgage money that you can spend.
Showing me up on the math side on this episode.
Sorry, it happens to be what I was good at.
So you bring up a fantastic point because I think that's another part of the consultation that I do where if they're looking in my general area, I know that Wissahickon taxes are going to be, roughly half to maybe 3/4 of what Upper Dublin taxes across the street are going to be, right? And that comes into play with our price point. So let's talk about that. Are you comfortable spending that kind of money in taxes to be in that school district if that's where you want to be? Or would you consider going to the adjacent school districts around that?
I mean, you make a really good point that buyers don't really consider. I get many times people who are like, oh, I'm buying it for the school district. Do you have children? No. When do you plan to have children? Maybe 2 years. So in general, kids don't start school till they're 6. You have 8 years of paying taxes for something you're not using. In that time frame, you could definitely switch houses if you want to and be in something that maybe suits you a little better today instead of spending money on something you're not utilizing.
Without a doubt. I think that's a great point. And again, it's showing your expertise and you're building loyalty with your buyers. And that's what I want to talk about next. So what's the best way to create loyalty and commitment from a buyer after the first meeting? How do you build that rapport with them?
Honestly, communication. It's just like any other ship. You have to put in the effort for it. There might be nothing new that comes on the market, but still the phone call should be nothing new came on the market. If you just leave them to flounder, they'll find somebody else to help them. So that's really what it comes down to, and making sure they realize that you're on their side. Many buyers feel you're supposed to be there to save them money. And I'm like, that's not my job. My job is to get you the house you choose to get.
Mm-hmm.
It's not to save you money. Frequently we'll get a question of, is it negotiable? Sure. But negotiations go in both directions. Mm-hmm. We're not negotiating down yet. We are still negotiating up because of our lack of inventory in New Jersey. Mm-hmm. Sure, you can negotiate down in Texas, Florida, because when they knock down one house, they build 40.
Yeah.
You knock down one house in New Jersey, you build one house.
Mm-hmm.
So really, our inventory is not being added to. It's just being exchanged for something more expensive that you still can't afford.
It's so true. It's so true. I love the process with buyers, especially first-time home buyers. I love working with first-time home buyers. A lot of people out there may scoff at that, but I feel like they're malleable. They listen to what you say typically. And when they get the home, they're so excited. And I feel like that's why we do what we do, right? Or at least that's why I do what I do.
100%. I have a brag book. And in my brag book, it has all the awards. They're all in the back. All the letters from clients or any reviews or surveys, they're all in the front. And I still have this letter that a gentleman wrote. He was 6'4", built like an offensive lineman. The Jets should have drafted him. They didn't. He cried at closing. He had come to me as a tenant and I went, "Why are you renting?" He's like, "I can't buy anything." We got him a mortgage. We got him a house. This man cried at closing. He wrote a letter to my broker at the time, and that is the first page of my brag book. And anytime I'm down on real estate, I open that book up, I read that letter, and I am in a good place again.
That is so cool. I made a change for somebody. That is so cool. I love that. And I love, take the opportunity, obviously, when you work with these people, if you're posting to social media, don't tell people that you sold a house. Everybody sells houses in real estate. That's our job. Tell a story about the process of selling that house with your buyers and what it meant to you and what it meant to them. That carries much more gravity. Absolutely. If you're looking for a return on that.
Nobody cares you sold 30 houses.
Yeah,
They care about the one house you sold to them.
Absolutely.
That's the difference maker.
100%. All right. So before we get out of here, I want to get in the habit of asking this question to all my guests.
Okay.
All right. So I want to know, this is not buyer related. This could be anything in real estate. All right. What is the one thing that you can't live without when it comes to your real estate business?
Oh. Probably.
I'm certainly putting you on the spot.
That's okay. That's okay. We can figure this out. Our tools come and go so often. I think it's really other agents that really make the difference for this, in being able to learn from them and grow from them and having those, maybe it's actually really conventions, because really our business is about connections.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they really make a big difference for our businesses. I have an agent that does 8 deals just from referrals from other agents. That's how she's building her business as a brand new agent.
Yeah, I like to ask this question because I know it's something to ponder, but we all have our secret sauce, right?
Yeah.
And I want to know, what's the one thing you can't live without, right? And you are a big connector guy. Like when we connected in Robbinsville, I know the convention is a big thing. Same with me. I mean, I think it's those relationships that are indispensable, right, for our business.
For sure. I had a client that was in Houston call me yesterday. He's like, "I have an investment opportunity in Jacksonville. I don't know whether or not I should do it." Like, I'm in New Jersey. But I pulled up BHHS Jacksonville, got in touch with an agent in 15 minutes. She went and did research. She called him. I might have a referral. All I did was connect the people in between to the right people. And that's really where I feel like we can make such a big difference.
I love that aspect of our business. I love the fact that you and I are talking. You're in North Jersey, right? I'm in Central. Oh,
Jersey.
You know what? So, all right. So you answered that question for me, because I've heard people say, is there a Central Jersey? There
Murphy made it official like 3 years ago. So now officially there is a Central Jersey.
All right, Central Jersey. I do apologize to you. So, all right, so you rarely make it to Philadelphia,
Yes.
right? That's fair to say.
Yes.
But you often most likely go to New York.
No.
You
We
do
take it
not.
for granted. It's right there.
How far away is New York from you?
45 minutes.
Oh my God, you don't go in New York at all? Well, this is going to kill my next question now, Addy.
I can still answer that question, actually. I got you. Don't worry.
All right, I got 24 hours, and I'm going to New York. What am I doing first?
I would hit Broadway. Pick a show.
Broadway.
It doesn't matter
Great
which
answer.
one. Go see it. We're actually going next week. So I may have made a mistake. I introduced my kids to Broadway.
Mm-hmm.
So all I get on my Alexa now is musicals all day long. And they found out that next week is Kids Go Free for Broadway week or whatever it is, like Kids Night on Tuesday. So the one daughter wants to go see Six. The other one wants to go see Outsiders. And the third one wants to go see, I can't even remember right now.
How old are your kids?
16, 13, and 11. The three that want to go. And Hadestown, right? So all great shows. So now I have to find adults to take them. So my wife is going to take one kid to see one show. I'm taking another kid to see another show. And my brother is taking a third kid to see the third show.
Which isn't an inexpensive hobby to do either.
Yeah.
So, all right. So with that, so funny that you mentioned that because when I was about 12 years old, we went to see Phantom of the Opera. And I was such a, going up there, I'm like, I don't want to go see this show. I was like blown away. And the soundtrack to Phantom of the Opera was like in the car for like the next 2 years. My parents just had that on repeat. So I could sing almost every word to that album.
I am very upset that I never got to see Phantom.
Mm-hmm.
But I've taken my kids to see Aladdin, The Lion King, Wicked's on our list. We saw Frozen the musical when it was out there. And honestly, they found other music that I never knew would have known existed. So there's a whole epic soundtrack musical that this college kid made for his college project. The music on that and the way he's told the Homer story, the Odyssey, unbelievable. So if you enjoy it, pull that up. I'm sure he'll appreciate it. It is impressive what that guy did.
Some of the talent that these people have is just out of this world, So, all right. So, where are you going to dinner then? After you're done seeing a show, where are you taking the kids to dinner?
I mean, they're really low key, and we just spent money on Broadway, so maybe it's McDonald's.
Come on, man. At least say like Little Italy or something like that.
My brother is a city guy. He lived in the city for years. I'm like, I have to go into the city. I might cry. But we stop at the Lego store every time.
Oh, well, that's definitely worth it. I'm a huge Lego guy.
Talk
about expensive hobbies, by the way. Yeah.
Their flagship store is right across from the cathedral. So we'll just pop into the flagship store, find a place to eat nearby, and they're all allowed to buy one set to do on the way home. So
that's very cool. My father, so I'm going to end on this story. So my father growing up used to like to go to the racetrack. And he used to bring me with him a lot of times when we would go. There's a lot of father and son bonding over horse racing, right? That sounds like such a wholesome activity. But to keep me occupied, he used to buy me some kind of Lego set. And I would sit there at this little table doing my little Lego set while he was watching the horses race. So and putting money down on them. So shout out to Dad for doing that when I was a kid. It actually was a lot of fun. But
you're not the only one. My family has horses in India that they race. So.
Oh, interesting. All right. Okay. All right. Well, listen, Adi, it was great having you on. Thank you for giving me your expertise about the buyer process. Thanks for coming down, man.
Of course. My pleasure.
We could have made this happen remotely. You were willing to take the trek down here. I really appreciate it. And I'm sure I'm going to be seeing you for probably another math session before long.
I'm happy to do it. I could do it on the fly over the phone.
Thanks, Adi. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Young John!